Today we're here with Zach Heyde. He's a fantastic composer, fantastic content creator, and mentor. We're gonna get to all of those topics. So welcome everyone, and welcome Zach. Hi, how are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well, man.
Great. Let's begin by talking a little bit about who you are, although I'm sure most of the music community in YouTube already knows, but let's talk a little bit about who you are and what do you do.
Yeah. I've composed my whole life. Started when before I could even remember. Always been into music. The story I always tell people is my parents said when I was 3 years old that they thought they had left the TV on downstairs and they heard the Flintstones, and when they came downstairs, they didn't see the TV was on. They found me playing like a toy xylophone. So they knew that I had music in me at a young age. And thankfully were very supportive of my journey. Gave me piano lessons when I was 7.
Hmm.
At the same time that I was doing piano lessons, I was making playing other people's music. There was also an opportunity to do a an annual composing competition in my school from K through 12, kindergarten through 12,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, which is super rare.
Yeah.
So I was composing every year, just one piece a year for that competition. But at that age, I never even really distinguished there was a difference between writing music and playing music.
Hmm.
But as I grew up, I started to determine, hey, these are actually two separate things with
Yeah.
two separate kind of jobs or ways you think about it. And I wasn't sure which one I was going to do. I was doing piano for so long that a lot of people thought I was going to become like a concert pianist, but
Hmm.
I did not have the discipline or interest to do concert pianist stuff. I was way more creative and expressive. So ultimately, I decided I was going to do composition after I heard a piece from Rachmaninoff when I was 14 years old.
Okay.
It was uh, it was his Prelude in C sharp minor,
Yes,
which I don't know if you're familiar with it,
I
but
am. I am. I am.
yeah. So the thing that really drew me into that piece was they talked about the bells and how Rachmaninoff was going nuts, and it was the first time I ever recognized that music could tell a story as
Hmm.
opposed to just be music that we play. There's actually stories behind the music and stories behind the people who write the music. And
Yes.
that has kind of essentially become my pillar through everything. While I've done composing for myself, while I've gone into the career of doing it professionally, through college, all of it, it's always been anchored towards telling great stories through music and finding ways to get better at that and express that to people. So that's kind of been my short-ish version
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it, but I've carried that message throughout as I've done it professionally now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of the same for me. I grew up playing violin because my school had a really good music program as well, music department. And it wasn't until I was 14, 15 that I thought, oh, playing violin isn't the same thing as making music.
Mm,
I play music someone else. I play music someone else makes.
hmm.
And when that distinction was clear in my mind, I stumbled upon a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, Score, a film music documentary.
Great documentary, yeah.
Okay. And when I saw that documentary, I was like, oh, wow, you can do this for a living, make music for
Hmm.
film and TV and stuff for a living. And since then, there was kind of no way back. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of similar, but I get it. Uh, and from there, I just started researching, stumbled upon your videos when I was in school. And definitely one of the first messages that the documentary and your videos and other videos got through to me was how important it is to know the story you're trying to tell through music.
Mm,
It's not just about making sounds. Sometimes it can be, but it is about the story you're trying to tell. Uh,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right.
Yeah. And well, I was gonna ask you about what got you into music and what made you want to pursue such a storytelling method of composition. But I think we've kind of gone through that already. Uh,
Yeah.
Before we move on into talking about the purpose of your content, especially the latest content you've been making, I do want to ask you a question, which is you have such a big and developed presence in the music community online. And I'm just curious as if that shapes the work you do somehow, or how clear do you have the separation between music you make, clients you work for, and then the stuff you put out there?
Oof, that's a deep question. I think that for a while, those things felt very compartmentalized for me. So, like YouTube for me when I started was a bit of a happy accident. I didn't really have any business intentions with YouTube. When I started, like right when my YouTube started, which was like 2006, that was simply because my dad wanted to share some of my piano performance videos with family. So it was like, oh, let's just make a YouTube channel. This thing started, it's a video platform. And that's how my channel began. So there was no, this will be my business strategy as a composer as I work up the ladder or something. It was just
Yeah.
like, this is how I share my work. And that's what it was for a very long time, all the way up until maybe 2017 or 2018. I was just sharing piano
Hmm.
performances, covers, that sort of thing. It wasn't really until just a little bit after college that I decided I wanted to start sharing the composing. But to speak to what you're talking about, when I did, really very few people were sharing composing videos on YouTube at that time. And so the feeling that I had back then was my my career is splitting in like three directions. I'm like, I'm doing YouTube over here, so am I a content creator? And then I don't feel like a content creator. Am I a composer? Because like I haven't landed any client gigs yet, so am I a real composer yet? And then I'm doing teaching over here, so am I a teacher? I constantly was juggling these three labels all the time, and truthfully, this might be a little deeper than the question you're asking, but I think it circles back. A lot of my behaviors and the choices that I made in those sectors were in support of feeling the way I wanted to feel, like feeling like a real composer.
Mhm.
So there were times when I would, for example, like not make YouTube videos because I'm like, oh, this is pulling me away from my composing career.
Mhm.
And this is what it means to be a real composer. Or like I would stop teaching because I'm like, well, I don't want to be like living on the fence here. And long story short, what I have realized is, I'm not doing three separate careers. I'm doing one career, and it manifests in different ways and it carries out in different ways. So I don't feel like I'm juggling three labels anymore. But it took a long time to get to that place where I felt like, I'm a composer front and center, and these are the ways that I express myself.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next, because I wanted to talk about how your content has really shaped into this very powerful message of the importance it is to have fun while we make music, even though it's our job, and to enjoy the creative process, no matter how messy or how simple it is. Uh,
Mm.
was that a message you always tried to put out through the tutorials and the videos and the teaching you did, or is that something you've learned as you've kind of understood how these three branches, composing, teaching, and making content, have kind of become one whole thing, become you?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So essentially, I think what happened for me was um, as YouTube started to build and I started to take it more seriously as a business, as a part of the business model, I started to make choices that would support what felt like growth for the business. So, for example, it stopped being about, the specific things that I was really interested in, and it started being conditional. Well, okay, I'm interested in this, but how is this going to perform as a video? Is this something that has, potential to go viral? Is the title and thumbnail, is that optimized properly for YouTube? And it's a challenging thing we navigate as creatives in general, especially when we're trying to make a living out of it. Of course, we have to consider those things. It's
Yes.
useful, but when it's left unchecked over time, we can really easily lose our way. And I was starting to lose my way. I would notice like I would be talking about a subject on YouTube and I wouldn't feel excited about it, or
Mhm.
there'd be a gig that would come in and I would just say yes, I wouldn't even think about it. And then, I'd feel like, why am I dragging myself to the studio today? That feels weird. That's not like me. And it really wasn't until I started to do more direct mentorship with composers,
Mhm.
because I'd done lessons before. That would be like, 1 hour lesson. Somebody comes in, my Logic Pro doesn't work. Help. I'd done that stuff. But I started doing really deeper mentorship with composers. Like the first thing that I did was a year long program with just a handful of people. It was like 8 to 10 people.
The bootcamp.
And there was
No.
the boot camp, which
Okay.
was starting to emerge those things.
Okay.
But I actually did private mentorship with a couple people from the boot camp. So it
Okay.
was like couple of them who I thought were good fits. Like, we're going to work together for the next year on a weekly basis, and we're just going to work through what comes up. And I learned a lot in that time. I realized that a lot of the things that I thought were helping composers help them to a certain level. And
Mhm.
then the things I was dealing with in my career were very in sync with the things that other composers were dealing with. And the rise of AI and all of the things that that's brought up for artists has also had a big impact on everything. And so all that to say, basically, I started to realize that the ways in which I used to teach things and the ways I used to engage with stuff and the projects I started to like um, weren't weren't resonating with me in the
Mhm.
same way.
Mhm.
And then I came to find out they weren't resonating with other people in the same way.
Mhm.
So as I've leaned more into talking about what I'm talking about now, which is getting really curious about, your own artistic voice, making sure that the process of making music feels fun and not just the outcome. I have noticed I feel much better with it because I'm really convicted in what I'm talking about. And it's had this amazing ripple effect where it turns out I'm not the only one who's been thinking about this stuff.
Mhm. Yeah. At the end of the day, it is a very honest issue to talk about because it is about all the beauty and the insecurities that the creative process can have, and has eventually for all of us. Uh, so I know we've kind of covered this, but that is usually a very intimate battle one has with
Mm.
themselves. So why do you find it so important to share it with such a loud voice?
It freaks me out to see how many people are not enjoying the process
Mm,
of making music. I mean, this, whether you want to think of it as a career or a lifestyle or whatever it is, I mean, our experience of this thing is the present. It's
mhm,
the present moment. It's not the future. It's not the outcome. And I've had, you know, I've been able to do some really crazy, cool things in my career. And so I can speak to this that, when you land a big major gig, when I got to write additional music for Kung Fu Panda
mhm.
on Netflix, one of the shows, don't get me wrong, that was insane. And I mean, that was a huge win, and I was proud of myself for what I've accomplished, all the amazing things. But the experience of doing that work is not the win of getting it. The experience of doing the work is doing the work.
Exactly.
And I was on that gig for about a year and a half,
Mm,
and very quickly, learned things about parts of it that I liked, parts of it that I didn't like,
mm,
and I've always kind of had the ability to recalibrate
mhm,
internally. So when things aren't feeling right for me emotionally, it's like I'm not enjoying this. I
mhm.
I will adapt my process to make sure it gets to a place that's enjoyable, whether it's learning a technical skill, whether it's kind of getting more curious about what I'm telling myself while I'm working on the project, whether it's like, getting more artistic inspiration. It's very important for me. But as I moved up doing this more professionally, I've spoken to more and more composers, particularly the ones who are doing it professionally. And when I talk to them, they're not happy. There's a
Mm,
lot of unhappy artists out there. And it was disturbing for me because I'm like, isn't this the whole reason why we do this? Is
exactly.
to do what we love? So how can we say that and then have so many people who are doing it professionally that don't like it? And I
Yes.
would talk to so many people that would say, um, oh no, no, I don't like composing. I just like when it's done.
Mm.
And I'm like, I don't understand that, but
Yeah.
that's what you do.
Yeah.
So I just can't help it, man. It's just like this is why I do this is because I like the process and it's so important for me to it's just inherent. I mean, I think it's for me it's self-evident
Mm.
that you should enjoy it,
Mm.
but learning that it hasn't been self-evident or for others people or that it's been blocked in a lot of cases or forgotten has made me very passionate about helping people to rediscover that because in doing that myself, like writing my album,
Yes. Which we'll
there's
get
just
to in
nothing.
a minute.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it. I felt like 10 years younger writing that album.
Yeah.
Like I had energy that I thought I was losing because I was just getting older.
Yeah.
And then when I kind of re-locked into the reason why I make music and this stuff, like I literally became youthful.
Mm.
Like I would get out of bed faster. I would come into the studio and be excited to be in here. You know, I would be like, I wouldn't be thinking about my business, just be thinking about art. And then the funny thing is, you have to really get in this place to experience it. But the funny thing is, all the stuff that people are looking for, like better clients or better pay or better music, all that stuff happens naturally as a byproduct because when you're really fired up about what you do, it's infectious. And so just by me being excited, I was getting better work anyway.
Mm.
So that's the irony is you have to focus on the stuff that you're passionate about in order to get those extrinsic things that are important to you.
That's true. I'm gonna circle back really quickly to a point you made, which I
Sure.
for somehow figure out really quickly as soon as I finished my degree. Because as soon as I finished my degree, it was time to start hunting for more of a professional short films and professional animations. And because it was just starting out, the hunt for those projects was really fun. And when I got that first professional short film, the high I felt when I got it was like, oh wow, I did it, I got it. And then it's like, oh no, this isn't what the high should be about.
Mm.
The high moment starts now that I get to sit down and make music for this script I've fallen in love with.
Mm.
So no question, just
Interesting.
circling
Yeah.
back to basically agree with you. Uh,
Hmm.
so going forward to what you said after about why you share uh, this message, which I think is not only important but necessary and powerful. It can be a real way to change the mindset of a lot of creative people and make them happy about going into the studio, like you said. Uh, if you had one easy, not easy, but one simple piece of advice for a creative who feels stuck in a formula or fearful about the way their industry is moving, what's that one simple piece of advice you would tell them to kind of get that their core kind of shaken and refocused like you did with your album?
Mm. Take a break. It's a simple answer, but there's more to it. So I don't think that you can really get back in touch with yourself uh, when you don't allow yourself to stop.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that someone needs to quit their job or go on a 6 month retreat somewhere in the woods, although that's like a romantic idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that dramatic. But speaking from myself, I thought I was taking breaks
Hmm.
and I was numbing in the
Okay.
way that a lot of people numb. So a lot of people will, we numb through our phones, which is one of the biggest ones. I'm convinced that if we didn't have phones, we'd have a lot more art in the world. That I really think that.
I agree with you.
Um, and I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
me
I'm
too.
speaking
Me
from
too.
personal experience.
Yeah, me too.
Um, but yeah, the first thing I had to do was take a break, a real break. And for me, it looked like walking away from some of the work that I was doing. It was, I was kind of at this fork in the road and I was doing a lot of additional music.
Hmm.
And I really always wanted to work on my own client projects. I'd always had that to an extent too. It was just, it was a yes and. So I was doing certain things that felt really good and then certain things that weren't.
Mhm.
And the first thing that I did was I gave myself permission to let go of the things that weren't aligned with me.
Mhm.
Um, Scary,
Mhm.
very scary, because we're conditioned as artists, especially doing it professionally, to say yes to everything, and
Yes.
that you can all just take what you can get, you know? So going in without a roadmap or a backup plan was scary.
Mm.
But in that space, um, and not filling that space with, oh my God, I need to get new clients as fast as possible, but filling that space with like, I'm just going to sit with this weirdness and discomfort. What started to emerge, and the kind of more tactical advice that I have for this is I just started to think about before my career, before I was pursuing it professionally, before I even went to college, like right the moment that I decided I wanted to compose, what was drawing me to composing then? Like,
Mm.
what was I so interested in? And we spoke to it a little bit, but for me, it was, I really liked angsty music. I was really into like The Matrix, and I was reading Edgar Allan Poe. I was like a nerd in high school. Um, and I started to wonder if maybe those things that felt kind of nerdy and suppressed when I was in high school might actually now be the things that are cool and the
Yeah.
things that kind of make me stand out, make me
Yeah.
unique. So I kind of went into that with that attitude of what if those things that I'm hiding are the reason why I do what I do?
Mhm.
And that created sort of this birth of, I'm going to like get back into that stuff. I started listening to the music I used to listen to when I was 14. I started rereading books that I read when I was 14. I redesigned the studio. I asked myself what I used to do what did I think a composer did, you know? And
Mm.
for me, it was like, walking with a pea coat in the park and like carrying a scorebook. And so I started doing all this stuff again without the pea coat because I'm in LA and it's hot. But as I started to do that, I started to feel more reconnected to why I did this in the first place. And that is really what helped me to feel grounded because now composing for me, when I cultivate that stuff, it feels like the way I thought that it would feel like
Mhm.
because I'm the one that's cultivating it and I'm not outsourcing that to a client
Yeah.
or to a YouTube audience or something. I'm building that ritual for myself. So that I think is ultimately the thing is like you got to ask yourself, why did you get into this in the first place before you knew anything? And what does it look like to pull some of those things back into your routines and your lifestyle now so you feel like a real composer?
Mm. Yeah. I think that's, yeah. Going back to taking breaks. Uh, even though I finished my degree in September and I'm literally just starting out. I'm in diapers, but I can really relate to that because over Christmas, uh, I decided to take a 2-week break for Christmas. I was going to spend it with my sister and some family friends uh, who live in Valencia. So we spent Christmas and New Year's over there. So I get there with my sister, and 2 days into the my 2-week break, my phone breaks. I dropped it. It done, done, complete loss. And it was fine because I was with my sister and family friends. I didn't need it immediately. I didn't need the phone immediately. Nothing was going to happen if I didn't have a phone. So well, they told me it's done. It can't be fixed. So I ordered a new one. Uh, and I could get the express delivery, which was like 2 days, or I could get the regular delivery, which was like 7 days. And I
Mm,
said, I want to get the regular delivery. At first, it was because I didn't want to pay £5. Then because I thought, well, no, let's see what happens. And
mm,
I didn't have a phone for a week. Uh, and I wasn't meant to do any music through those 2 weeks. It was a break of everything, no editing videos, nothing. And one day, I just said, oh, I'm gonna grab my computer, I'm gonna make some music. And that has been one of the favorite pieces I've ever made, just for me on my own. And it came from this very small, purposeful break where
mm.
coincidentally I didn't end up having a phone. And I just
Brilliant.
found myself within myself and all of these things I had inside me, and I just made something out of it. And it just was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was it was a really great experience. So,
I mean, and I think that there is an overlap these days, especially. I mean, the desire for efficiency in artistry, I understand where it comes from, and I do get it. Especially when people feel, a lot of people that I have worked with express the idea that, you know, they're already on like borrowed time and they're already trying to catch up. There's
mhm,
often a feeling of, you know, I'm behind and I need to catch up. And that's where a lot of this desire for tools and tutorials and templates, a lot of this comes from that feeling of I'm just not fast enough.
mhm,
And I understand that because I felt that way too. And I've been doing this forever. But things are changing now. I mean, now with the advent of AI and where things are headed in terms of technology, trying to be the fastest composer is, I believe, is not the proper. It's not going to future proof someone professionally.
yeah.
It's not going to be fulfilling artistically either. But even for a professional, it's not going to be the thing that makes you stand out. I think the thing that is going to really differentiate artists moving forward now more than ever is their ability to look inward
Mhm.
and to find that more innocent, pure place of self expression, and then to have the confidence to be able to put that out publicly. Because it is one thing to be able to do this internally. And some composers are great at this, at being able to say, no, no, I forget the tools. I'm just making the music I want to make. But those composers are often very hesitant or resistant or blocked up when it comes to sharing that.
Mhm.
So those are the two sectors that I mean, in my mentorship with composers, those tend to be the two things that I do is I help people who are really prolific and really professional get back to their kind of intrinsic reason why they make music.
Yes.
And then the people who are really intrinsic already, I help them get to that place where they can share it publicly without feeling like it's burning them out or taking them away from their art or turning them into content creators. Because when you can find that overlap, I think really, really special things happen because these algorithms are not our enemies always. Like, as an artist, these things are incredible. Like, if you can put out music that resonates with you, it will it will find people who resonate with what you do. And it's just a matter of bridging that gap and making sure you're doing it for the right reasons and staying true to that.
So with that, let's get into your album.
Sure.
The Call of Ravens Hollow. That's the title.
Yep.
I've heard it more than once. I think it's amazing, incredible. My favorite track is uh, Escaping the Workshop. That's my favorite track
Cool.
for sure. Uh, let's begin, for those who don't know what the Call of Ravens Hollow is. Let's begin by you telling us, well, what it is and what was the very first seed of the album? Like, what was that seed that was planted within you that said, and we've already kind of talked about this, but not within context. So now within context, what's that idea that appeared in your mind? It's like, I have to do this.
Mhm.
I need to do this.
Yeah. So in the period where I was leaving additional music, I was also being mentored myself. So I've been on both sides of this, not by a composer, just actually a business mentor, but he happens to be a really good dude and really grounded. His name's Rich Webster. And, um, you know, I had a lot of free time opened up when I left additional. Like, I didn't realize how much free time was going to open up because I'd been doing additional for like 2 years. And so when I left, it was suddenly like blank calendars.
Hmm.
I mean, truly, like, it's like, I don't have anything to do this week. I don't understand. And so the first instinct I had was, well, I got to find some work. But what I noticed was, you know, I had all these ideas of people I was going to reach out to, and I noticed I just wasn't doing it. And so I had to ask myself, why? Why am I, what am I looking for? And why am I not looking for clients in order to solve that? And what I realized was, even though it's still a dream for me to work on, you know, a game or something that does this kind of music, I realized that I was more in need of that creative outlet than I was of the like financial outlet at that time. And so I was talking to my mentor about it. And I was like, I don't know, like maybe I'll just write another album or something. And he was like, you said it, not me. And it kind of planted a little seed in me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe I should write another album because it had been 5 years since my previous one. But I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to make. So, and the first skill I had to relearn was sitting to make music for myself without turning it into a YouTube video or for a client, because that is a muscle that was way out of whack. I mean, the music I used to write for myself outside of client stuff, I would just pop that into a YouTube video, turn it into something, you know? So I felt like I had no outlet for myself. So I basically just started by just making random stuff. Like I was like, one orchestral thing over here, one weird electronic thing over here, some like, I don't know, yeah, percussion-y thing over here. No intentions of it being anything, but just getting in that habit of building that muscle again. And the first thing that emerged that went, oh, that's interesting, was what is now the track called The Boy Awakens.
Mhm.
So it was just, I think there was only maybe 3 or 4 instruments on that track. It's really stripped down and simple. But from that one track, I just played with some interesting things. I just finished playing a game called Little Nightmares, which is an amazing, like, cozy horror game. And so it's kind of in that vibe. And that one track had enough interesting stuff for me to go, I want to go deeper into that.
Mhm.
That interests me. And from that track came 2, and then from that track came 3, and then after a while, once I started building momentum, I got to a place where I said, you know what, I think I'm comfortable sharing this now online. So I started to document the journey a little bit. There's I think 6 or 7 videos of me kind of making parts of the album, not all of it. Um, and that basically expanded. Yeah, it started to become actually not just music, but a world. I started to write stories on a typewriter I have back here. I have like chapters of the story that haven't even been released, of like full characters and things that they do. Um, Started to like make things out of clay. There's a little raven back there. Like I just really took it upon myself to go in every direction artistically and not just musically. And I think that's what kept me really creatively fresh and alive through the process. And then the highlight of the whole thing for me as a composer was I decided I was just going to go out of my own pocket and fund the Budapest Orchestra
Yes, we'll
doing
get to
3 of
that.
the tracks.
We'll get to
Yeah.
that.
So
Yes.
it just became this big kind of magnum opus, but certainly didn't intend to start it that way. It just
Mhm.
started from a very simple idea. And I think that's kind of the metaphor for a lot of what we're talking about in here.
Yes.
Is I just started from something that interested me and just kept going deeper into it.
I mean, ultimately, it is a dark fairy tale narrative.
Yeah.
It is very
Yep.
Pinocchio-esque.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was intended.
yeah, the colors remind me a lot of my friend, another game recommendation. I haven't played it, but a very close friend of mine loves a game called Lies of P.
Oh yeah, great game.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
I
that a
found
lot.
it afterwards. I was
Okay,
glad because I'm like, oh shoot, this
that could have
this
gotten
is
in,
like,
yeah, into your
yeah,
mind.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it is a very immersive experience listening to the album. You can very clearly follow a story and the characters. And I think that's a product of all the other creativity you were putting out there in your everyday, excluding music, as you said, writing the stories and working with clay, all those
Hmm.
things. Uh, so we kind of went over this as well, but what were some kind of the influences, whether they were movies or literary, like literature or music? What were some of the
Yeah.
influences that drew you towards finally saying, yes, this is it?
Yeah, initially it was some games I was playing. I was playing Little Nightmares, and I just thought it was one of the coolest games I'd played in a long time. Specifically, Little Nightmares 2, actually. It was just an incredible game, a very immersive experience. The music in that soundtrack in itself is incredible. Um, but I've just always been drawn to particularly nonverbal stories. I
Mhm.
love stories where characters don't speak because I think there's a timeless quality to them. I also love like folklore and fairy tales for that reason too. Is they're skeletal structures of stories that are inherently timeless. And I think with a lot of those things, we tend to put ourselves into the character's shoes because they are almost like empty vessels. So that in itself drew me in with games. when I started to go back to the stuff I was reading as a kid, it was like some Edgar Allan Poe. Uh, I pulled out some Lovecraft, which has some crazy imagery in there. One thing that I was really drawn to, there was uh, a short story by Arthur Conan Doyle,
Hmm.
who is the Sherlock Holmes
Sherlock
author,
Holmes.
and he did a short story called The Parasite. And what really drew me into that story actually was just the way that Conan Doyle writes. He has a lot of interesting phrases and words he uses. And what I started to do is I would just collect when I saw a word, I'm like, that is a cool word, or that's a cool expression. I just had a journal and I would just write them all down. So I have like 5 pages of just words. One of them was unstrung. He
Okay.
had a character that was going crazy, and he said, "I'm momentarily unstrung," and I was like, that's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
So some of the language in the album, like on the title tracks and things, are inspired by some of the work I was reading with literature. And then I think the last component was just nature. I'm in LA, so there's not a ton of nature here, but at the time I used to go to a park called Gabrielino Trail, and it's this beautiful park where you go in, it's kind of deserty on the outside, you don't really know where you're getting into, and then as you get in it becomes canopied. So there's trees everywhere, you suddenly are like dropped into a forest. And I tried to spend time in between writing the album, just going there a couple times and just reminding myself what it feels like to be in the woods.
Hmm.
And that's where it gets really intangible. Like I can't tell you, oh, this specific thing inspired this, but the feeling of being in the woods and particularly alone, because when I went, there was like nobody there. That feeling of like anything could happen. This doesn't feel safe. What if I get lost? I tried to just make little mental notes of those emotions. And so when I would go back into the studio to compose, those things would kind of naturally come out of me. So it was much more than just musical inspiration with this one. It was like pulling everything in and
It,
kind of,
it 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 sounds like
yeah.
a very organic process.
Yeah,
Uh,
I tried to become what I call a method composer, which is like
yeah.
you just live that story. You don't have to suffer if your character suffers, but you just immerse yourself in that environment as much as possible
Yeah.
and then just kind of let your subconscious lead what comes out of you creatively.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always had this idea of whenever I finally get my proper studio with all my things to try and kind of change some things between projects.
Yeah.
You know, a painting, kind of switch the
Yeah.
painting depending on the story I'm making or the film I'm making music for, to kind of just, enter the studio and be like, okay, yeah, this is it. Which
It
is,
doesn't take much. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I tell composers that like seems to change people's lives. It's so simple. It's just a candle,
yeah.
a candle, 5, $10, and you can immediately give yourself a little bit of an atmosphere of somewhere specific. You could
Mm.
get like a yeah, foresty candle or something that feels like the ocean, or you can just a little bit of environment building, I think, makes a huge difference. And it signals to artists that this is art and not work. So I think that's kind of the key is to get into that zone.
So we've kind of established a timeline of the project, beginning by talking with your mentor and then just experimenting until you found that one track that drew you into this world you were building, exploring this world not just through music, but writing and sculpting and walking. So once you find the story and once you start making the story, uh, how did the timeline keep developing?
Yeah. So, and I think one thing I want to add in here too, because I think when people are hearing the story and hearing that, the romantic idea of it, I think the instinct a lot of people go is like, well, that sounds like fun, but I don't have time for that.
Hmm.
And I was not spending 8-hour days doing this every single day of the week. I mean, sometimes it would be 30 minutes once a week. And then other times when I had more freedom, it was a little bit longer, or sometimes it would be in the late at night, or it would be before a meeting. Like everybody has the ability to do this. If you have the ability to binge watch a TV show, you have the capacity to build a creative world 100%. So I think that's a really important thing. And so to that point, I had a lot of free time in the beginning. as I got later in the project, I also had more work things coming up. And so that challenge of, hey, like, you don't want to let this thing slip, you're building this world. Uh, Balancing those two things became a little bit more challenging. And also, that honeymoon stage of in the beginning of creativity, it's not the same feeling as you get later. As you get later in the project, it's now about organizing and it's about tweaking and the energy shifts. So I'm describing the romantic period in which I was letting all the ideas come in. Then it's kind of like, all right, button up, make things make sense, get it there. So it became more challenging, but because I'd spent so much time in the beginning making sure it was coming from a place that was important to me, that drive to complete it didn't feel painful. Like I would still have to tell myself, all right, dude, like I know you want to watch TV, but like you want to get this album out by April, so get to the studio. But it felt like it was for me.
Hmm.
And that's I think the key distinction is discipline doesn't feel like discipline if it's really rooted in passion and intrinsic value. And so as I just worked really hard in the beginning to make sure it stayed that way. So yeah, it was tougher. But I was able to mostly stick to the deadlines and make sure it got done. And yeah, I mean, the other thing you can do is just tell people you're going to have an album out at a certain time. I just told people I'm going to be done with an album in the spring, and that really worked.
That's what I was gonna ask before diving into the recording with the orchestra, which was
Yeah.
you did put yourself deadlines.
Yep.
And so how much, because when one dives into a personal project like this, it's very easy to get lost in the flow of time because you really don't have a deadline, and you can always
Right.
visit stuff and shift stuff and change stuff. So how much did that big deadline, and I'm guessing other smaller deadlines in the way, help you uh, get to publishing?
Yeah, I didn't set a deadline for the first probably 3 months
Mhm.
that I was working on the album. I think the whole album took about maybe 6 months in total. And then there was like obviously some just logistical stuff at the end of it of getting it out and things like that and promotional material. That's a
Yeah.
whole separate thing. But um, first half of it, I didn't even set a deadline. I was like, this is for me. This is for me to re engage with my art. This is to get, have fun, be creative. It's not about having an end product. After the 3 months, I knew I wanted to make and finish something. And so I basically just asked myself, what period of time do I think I'd still want to listen to this thing when it's done? Because I've been on both sides of this. I've done stuff that's really fast turnaround. I've also done stuff that's really slow. And I have experience to know my sweet spot. Um, so I knew kind of where that was going to be. But what was really important to me is like, I did not want to be done with this album and say, I never want to hear or talk about it again.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that I can still listen to it and enjoy it because that's the reason why I made it in the first place. And I am. I still listen to my own album. So
That's great.
it's yeah, I was able to accomplish that. It still feels like it's for me. That's how I found my sweet spot personally, was asking myself that. And that goes not just with the deadline, but with every decision you make before, the sub deadlines of
Mhm.
how do I know this track is done?
Yes.
Am I getting sick of it?
Yeah.
If I'm getting sick of it, then I better finish this real quick so that I can still enjoy it when it's done. That
That's a
was kind
great
of my metric.
that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
So then the orchestra comes in. Just walk me through that experience because it must have been great.
Yeah, I mean this the scary thing for me was like I had already sunk so much time into the album, and then on top of sinking all my time and energy, deciding I'm also going to just sink money into it because orchestras ain't cheap.
Yeah.
That was a thing in itself. I was like, do I do crowdfunding? Do I, like how do I approach this? And eventually I just decided, I want to do this album completely on my terms. I don't want to feel any external pressure for this one specifically. So I'm just going to fund it myself.
Hmm.
And decided to just save up, fund the orchestra. The scariest thing was I wanted to get 3 tracks done in 30 minutes. And that is ambitious.
How long each track?
The tracks were about 2 to 3 minutes each.
Yeah, that's ambitious.
Yeah. It was very ambitious, yeah, because for anybody who doesn't know, like the orchestras don't practice this stuff. They get the sheet music and they go.
Geniuses,
And yeah,
magicians,
they're insane. Absolutely insane.
magicians.
So yeah, I got an orchestrator to just take a look at it. He's somebody I've worked with professionally, and I said, "Listen, like, am I out of my mind? Like, what is possible here?" And he was like, "It's going to be tight. Here's what you think about. Do this, don't do this." Spent the night before listening through. I imagined myself running through the orchestral session, saying, "Okay, here's what happens if this gets screwed up. If this takes longer, I'm going to do this." Really mapping it out.
Hmm.
And then it's kind of a performance, actually, when you go to work with the orchestra. It becomes very similar to like performing an instrument live.
Hmm.
It's performative. You're engaging with them. You're improvising on the spot. You're adapting to what they're doing well or not doing well. And thankfully, yeah, we were able to get stuff down. Like the last take we needed was the last take we had.
Oh, that's
So it
great.
was
That's
that in
great.
itself was exciting. And there's nothing like that experience. If
Yeah.
if composers get an opportunity to do that once in their life, you should take it.
Did you get involved in the mixing? Because that must have been a pretty big mix session.
I did the early mix, like as good as I could get it, and then I also decided to outsource that to
Okay.
one of my mixing friends, and that was awesome because his name's Will Chen. Um, he was the amazing thing about this album is because of the creativity that I put into it, I found that everybody else was engaging in their own creativity.
Yeah.
So he was making custom reverbs based on what he thought the inside of tree trunks would sound like. Like he was going all in just in the same way that I was, and building a world like on your own and then inviting other creative people into that world to offer their own perspectives. That was what I remember the most about making
Mhm.
this album. Not the finished piece of music, but the whole experience of doing that with other people was just so much fun. I mean, it's like
It it
easily the most fun project I've ever done.
it goes back to what we were saying before, that that energy is infectious within a creative space. That
Yes, very
that
much so.
that honesty and authenticity, it's infectious, especially when it's accompanied with a smile. So
Yeah.
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 Uh, so this is kind of a tedious question, but what comes next? Do you have any other ideas within the world of Ravens Hollow? Are you thinking of making up a new world? Are you what's next? For what when can we hear more Zach Heyde music? Because
Yeah.
it became part of my everyday, and now I'm kind of needing more.
You're itching more. Yeah. I mean, truthfully, like same. I when I finished this album, I've done albums before. And I've done client work before. And there's always been a feeling of like, type a bow, put it away, it's out for the world, move on. This is the first thing that I've done where I was like, I I don't think I made an album here actually. I think I opened a door for myself and I'm not ready to leave that space.
Yeah.
So the short answer is I'm kind of just re-engaging right back into that process. I'm not taking that like method composer thing as this cool honeymoon season phase of my career. I'm taking it as like I just learned something really important about myself and I'm going to continue to cultivate it. So on YouTube, what I'm doing now is I'm treating this as an ongoing series where I'm just going to sit down, do my ritual. I got a fog machine now, so that's kind of cool. Um, Make music with no pretense about what it's going to be and organize it and see what I can do, how I can maybe expand the world of Raven's Hollow. Maybe I can tell side stories with characters that were involved in it. Maybe it emerges into a new world. I don't know, but what I do know is this kind of art first, business second thing is something that I'm locked into now. At this point, I trust it and I've seen results for it. There's been
Mhm.
licensing deals that have come through. There's been plenty of like cool business things,
That's
but it's
great.
all been a byproduct of being really passionate about art first and cultivating that space. So there will definitely be more music soon.
Cool, cool. That's
Whether
great
it's
to
an
hear.
album, I don't know, but something is coming.
That's great to hear. And that leads really well into my final question, which is
Sure.
I know you've been sharing a lot of the process behind the album. You're doing it right now with me in this interview. And My final question is, when people experience the Call of Ravens Hollow with accompanied with these important messages that you have to share about how art needs to be put first and authenticity and honesty and truth and enjoying the art you make, what is the experience that you want your audience to have when they get to listen to that album combined with the understanding of the purpose that drove it?
Mm. I hope that when people listen to the album, they can use it as a vessel to reflect. What I've noticed is a lot of people who have listened to the album, people that have reached out to me, have been listening to it in very introspective periods of their life, which is funny because that's why I wrote it too. Um, but yeah, I encourage people to just not put it on as background music. I mean, I won't be offended if you do, but I also think there's an opportunity to listen to art like Raven's Hollow as a space to
Mhm.
just kind of reconnect with yourself, whether you're an artist or just someone with an imagination, because everybody's got that. And yeah, just make pretend a little bit, like just make believe, like a picture yourself in the environment, like allow yourself to get in that world and just see how that makes you feel, taking 30 minutes out of a week to do that, because I think this is a felt thing that we're talking about and a remembered thing, as opposed to like a skill thing or learning something. It's everybody's been here at this point in their life as a kid, and we just need someone to like unlock that door for us again, or give ourselves time to unlock that door. So I'd encourage people, yeah, use the album as a way to potentially unlock that door and remember how great it feels to use your imagination, and then explore what it might look like to integrate some imagination into your own life and make some time in your schedule to use that imagination for cool creative things, whether it's an album or even just like a little 30-minute thing you do for yourself for fun.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's great. It's definitely what my experience was while listening to the album. It really felt like a because I knew what you were doing. I didn't stumble upon it. I knew you were trying to tell a story through this kind of concept album. And when it finally came out, I did sit down with just headphones and listen to it all the way through.
That's
Uh,
so cool, man.
and that idea of using this as a vessel to transport yourself to this world you've created, and then once that's done, just sitting there for a while on your own and thinking not only how cool it was, but letting that infect your creativity and all the beauty and terror and everything that comes between within it as well. I think it's a very
Yeah,
powerful experience. So to those who haven't done it, well, The Call of Ravens Hollow, it's everywhere, right? Spotify, Apple
it's
Music,
everywhere.
everywhere. So check it out. Uh, Zach, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, for sharing all of these great insights and stories and experiences with everyone who's watching and listening this interview. I can't wait to see what you do next. Uh,
Thank
and
you,
yeah,
man.
everybody go out,
Yeah.
check The Call of Ravens Hollow now.
Right now.
Now.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.